Hey YouTube. So after all the videos that I made about Diablo 4 recently and things that I think are going to be pros and cons, things that I hope are going to be there and so on and so forth, um, something kind of came to mind that uh, I've had as a thought for quite a while, and I've talked to a few of my buddies back when we would play games like World of Warcraft and ESO and things like that. And the reason why it came back to mind in regards to my thinking about Diablo 4 was because of Diablo 4's mounts. And how it's very obvious that, of course, Blizzard's plan is that you would buy mounts um, through their whole microtransaction system. Now, the thing is that this conversation came up between me and my buddies when we were discussing mounts in ESO, Elder Scrolls Online. And he was saying how, he really likes the mounts a lot. They're very pretty, but there's sort of something that's sort of missing, right? And he hates World of Warcraft, of course, but I was explaining to him that, Blizzard, honestly, this is probably one of the things that Blizzard is unaware of the magic that they had created because of this. But the mounts in World of Warcraft are far more, how do I put it? They're far more meaningful than in other games. And this includes other MMOs such as, like I said, ESO or even SWTOR, the Star Wars MMO, and a couple of other ones that I played, where you pretty much purchase the mount a lot of times. ESO almost exclusively that way. I think SWTOR, most of them were that way. In World of Warcraft, there are a lot of mounts that they just drop, or you had to grind a certain reputation in order to acquire them, or you had to be there for a certain event, and on and on and on. They have a few mounts that you buy, but most of them actually are things that are done in game. And I don't think that that's by design. Like, the outcome of it, the fact that the mounts actually mean something to you at that point. You're attached to those mounts because of that reason. Not because you found them in game, but because there was actually something that happened in game that you can then look at the mount. You can bring the mount out and mount up on it in World of Warcraft, and it brings back that memory. Oh, that's the guild that I was in when we got that achievement together. Oh, that was the day that I was having when I went and grinded all that reputation to finally get that mount. Oh, that was this. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was something in there all the time that ended up being something quite memorable. And each individual mount meant something. Even when it was an RNG, it was just like, you remember, man, I was talking to that person in Ventrilo or Discord or whatever, comms you were talking to them in, and that mount dropped, man. I was just tripping, man. It was amazing. And you remember that day, you remember that moment, you remember the person you were talking to, you remember what you were talking to them about, you remember where you were in the game. It relates the experience back to the game, and it relates the experience back to you. When you buy a mount from a store, there is no anything. The mount is pretty, and that's where this conversation sort of came up between my friend and I. He was saying World of Warcraft mounts aren't as pretty to him as the mounts that are found in ESO. That's completely subjective, right? But I was saying I don't necessarily completely agree with you. I like some in ESO, and I like some, there's good ones and bad ones everywhere. But the one thing that ESO doesn't have is my having a memory to that mount. In fact, the only mount that I have a memory to in ESO was the first mount that I actually purchased with my gold that took a long time to get from the stable master in Elder Scrolls, the first mount, right? The I can't remember what level I was at when I got it, but I remember the people that I was talking to. I remember the town that I was in. I remember the stable master, like, vividly. I remember all these things. And that's from me just buying one in game versus like paying real money in order to just poof, it's there. Like open your pam, you kind of have it. Even when you're buying a mount off the auction house or one of your buddies, like I remember in World of Warcraft, I remember when my buddy made me my I forget the name of it in World of Warcraft, but I believe it's the Mechano Chopper or something like that, right? The first initial engineering motorcycle. I remember when my buddy had that pattern, he said, just farm up these mats and whatever and get and we'll make one for you. I remember that. And I remember spending time doing that for a couple of days while talking to him on, I think at that time, probably Ventrilo. I mean, it was such a long time ago. And so anyways, that's it. Like the video is sort of short and sweet, but there's something really to be said about that. There's a magic that Blizzard created, and I think they're absolutely unaware of that magic because the magic is beyond it just being a wonderful experience for the player. It literally is one of the things that calls the player back. As messed up as that seems, it's a reality. There's so many other MMOs that have come out aside from World of Warcraft, but yet people go and play that MMO for a little bit, but they always look home to World of Warcraft. Why is that? Sure, their friends are there. That's what you could easily say on the surface, but it goes dig a little bit deeper, and you realize, oh well, that's also where their time has been spent. Okay, that's fine, but you spend a lot of time on a lot of other games. You don't always go back, but you dig a little deeper, and you realize, well, the time that I spent has actually literally gotten me this pet. It got me this mount. It got me this title. You see what I'm saying? Like those things were achieved in the game. And they bring back memories, and those memories trigger nostalgia. And that's a key element to what brings people back to always wanting to play World of Warcraft incessantly. And not necessarily other MMOs. And I think that it's important for Blizzard to understand that recipe for that magic for ultimately all their games and not give in to this superficial level of how other companies have been almost forced to make their money through microtransactions because they just want the money now. They don't realize, like Blizzard doesn't realize that was part of the recipe to make World of Warcraft last as long as it is, to make as much money as they have off of World of Warcraft. And if they wanted to do the same for Diablo 4, they would need all these microtransaction things, like I've said in previous videos. It works to their benefit to give the player memorable, beautiful things that they've gotten from armor, set transmog sets, to, because the transmog thing, it's that way in World of Warcraft as well, because you go out and you farm them. But from those transmog sets to mounts and so on and so forth, if they just make it all like, let's just make a quick buck as soon as we possibly can, and they do everything microtransaction, there's no longevity there. Because there's nothing that you can look back at and always have that brings up that very, very acute moment-to-moment nostalgia of just fond memories of having fun during that game like they have in World of Warcraft. Anyways, food for thought. Take care, guys.